Gardening, it's a big experiment, but it's an experiment that I take on because I know that it might be one day my only food source. If it were my only means of survival, I admittedly would probably die, as I'm far from a master gardener. The potato is one of the best prepper foods, right up there with sunchokes and sunflowers. So I had heard about and even suggested a potato tower for those with lousy soil or limited space. Because I recommended it, I wanted to put it to the test and bring my studied understanding of it into practice. I also wanted to test it out because I'd seen people online who had never posted results, had weak harvests, or simply claimed that the potato tower does not work. Because of this, I turned to my own test garden to give it a try. Here's what I did and my results, and I'll let you judge how well the first harvest succeeded or failed. Building the potato tower is pretty straightforward. You want to begin by making the tower. I used some fencing material, but chicken wire, metal, or plastic fencing could be used as well. Your plants will grow out of the sides and top of this. Here in this example, I use a mix of soils and hay. The hay is really just to keep all the soil from running out. Depending on the size of your fencing holes, you could use sawdust, but straw, hay, or some other grass or twigs will work best. It will also help retain moisture in your mix and allow water to penetrate more deeply into your tower. So, though it is essential on the outside edge, it is equally important to mix the hay throughout. My soil is not the greatest, so I use a combination of local dirt and organic garden soil mix. To this, I added in the hay. My ratio is about 3 parts soil to 1 part hay. Mix this up thoroughly. The wire or fencing tower is easily constructed by creating a loop with a diameter of about 1.5 feet or 2 feet and fastening the ends together. When placed in your garden area, you'll want to stake it down, and you can add a long pole on the side or through the middle, as you'll want to make sure that your tower does not tip. The idea of the tower is that it takes up less space. Potato plants, they'll spread out in your garden, so adding a layer of hay at the bottom will prevent them from escaping into the rest of your garden. I have my tower in one of my raised beds amongst my chives, bird pepper, sage, oregano, and artichokes. On a side note, the presence of the tower and the runoff caused my other plants to thrive, likely because of the additional watering. To this layer, I'll add a healthy couple of inches of my soil mix. With some hay around the sides, you can add regular garden mix or soil if you think you have too much hay in there. To this layer of dirt, you'll add a few of the seed potatoes. I will address that a little later in this video. You'll want to place them around the outside edge, about 6 per layer and about 4 to 6 inches in from the tower's outer wall. The plants will grow outside and the potatoes will soon be in the center. Place another layer of about 4 to 6 inches of soil mix directly on top of these seedlings. Repeat the process of placing seedlings around the exterior, add more dirt, more seedlings, more dirt, more seedlings, all the way up to the top of your tower. I found that adding more hay and working that to the sides was an excellent way to keep the soil secure in the tower. With each layer, you'll want to ensure that your seedlings have good access to a healthy amount of nutrient-rich soil. I also got in the practice of just using a thin layer of hay on the exterior to keep my soil contained better. Don't be afraid of packing the soil densely in the tower. The seedlings will find their way. Because one of the many complaints about potato towers is keeping the tower irrigated, I watered every few layers to ensure the initial soil was moist enough. Repeat this stacking procedure until you reach the tower's top. The amount of dirt in your tower will depend upon its height and base radius, but I calculate mine to have taken about 9 cubic feet of dirt and hay mix, which is 1/3 of a cubic yard. And that's a lot, so take that into account when setting out to make your initial mix or digging the dirt out of one area to fill your tower. As you get to higher levels, building your tower is easier. I estimate that it took me about an hour to make the whole tower. Using some of my own soil in the mix allowed me to filter out grubs which might feast on my potatoes. The hay I put at the base will help prevent these grubs from coming up into the tower and eating my potatoes. On the final layer, add hay or sawdust to the top and a mound of dirt on top of that. The top dirt will wash down through the hay, and the hay will hold moisture in your tower. Water the whole tower gently until it is completely saturated. I gave it a thorough watering out of the gate. Watering and retaining the correct moisture levels is a big challenge for potato towers. I found the best method for watering to be to wrap a hose trickling water around the stability pole I inserted on the edge of the tower and right in the center. We don't get much rain here in Southern California, so this method worked out pretty well, even when I accidentally left it on overnight. Spraying the sides is effective for already sprouted plants, but top-down irrigation from the center is best. You can also hand water by slowly adding water to the center. Chitting is a method of preparing potatoes or other tubers for planting. Stock regular store-bought potatoes really aren't the best for this, as they are often sprayed with sprouting inhibitors. If you have potatoes with eyes forming in the sprouts, you can use those. Place them in a paper bag in a cool place and let the eyes develop into shoots. When they are at a healthy stage, you can plant the whole potato, cut in half, or cut it into eye sections with a good solid inch or more of the potato attached to each eye. Here's where I think I went wrong. I used a combination of store-bought seedling potatoes and some red potatoes that had started chitting in my storage, purple, Kennebec, and Yukon Gold. As you can see from my early harvest at just 90 days, none of these store-bought seedling potatoes were successful, just a few baby Yukons. The red potatoes that had gone too long in my cupboard were far more successful. Separate your sprouted sections, then let them dry on the potatoes inside. This will take no more than a day, but will lock the moisture into the plant piece. At this point, you're ready to plant. In hindsight, my seedling potatoes were so small to begin with that I probably should have just skipped this step and planted the whole potato to let it work its magic. That may have been part of the smaller harvest, but I'm not completely sure, as even the established sprouts with 4 inches or more of sprouted section didn't grow in my tower either. Depending on your weather, you should start to see the green leaves of the potato plant sprouting through in a week or two. Pull back on the watering when you do, and avoid overwatering, which can lead to rot. The plants will get more prominent as the growing season progresses. Ideally, the more greenery you have growing around your tower, the more energy will be sent into the roots in forming potatoes. Potatoes, they're a root plant, and you can see here how they form along the root of the plant. As they get bigger, the potatoes will only maintain small, hair-like tendril root connections to the plant, so they easily separate from the plant at harvest time. You can harvest as early as 90 days, but it will be a small harvest of just a few potatoes. You'll really want to wait until the green part of the plant flowers in yellows, browns, and then dies off before harvesting. Since I was getting inconsistent growth patterns, one side of the tower wasn't greening up and I had some die-off without flowering. I opted to call the experiment at the 90-day point to assess the results. Ideally, you want the plants to flower and then start to die off. And for the most significant harvest in potato size, wait 120 days from the time you first begin to see the green popping out. The easiest way to harvest is to pull out the supporting stakes and then tip the whole tower over onto a tarp. At this point, you only need to sift through the dirt and separate the potatoes in plant sections. I first noticed that the potatoes at the top were bigger. Rolling the tower easily separates the soil and potatoes from the wire tower. It will take some time to remove all the potatoes and plants from the dirt mix. Using the tarp method allows you to really shake the soil around to sift out any potatoes. I did one final sift with the shovel before adding the ground back into my garden. I'll probably get at least one volunteer potato plant next season by reusing the dirt in this way. Potatoes are cool weather vegetables. Planting potatoes 2 to 3 weeks before your last frost date will result in potatoes sprouting in early spring. You can get at least 2 successful crops per year of potatoes. As I said, my tower produced mixed results. The harvest was quite literally small potatoes. My store-bought seedlings failed to deliver, and remember, I harvested at the earliest point possible. If I had waited a little longer, I'm sure the potatoes would have grown slightly larger. I'll probably make another tower this month to confirm my results and apply what I learned from this first run at it. Unfortunately, I don't think I can completely bust the myth of the efficacy of potato towers. In total, I put 26.5 ounces of seedlings. I don't know how many ounces of those were specifically the red variety. In my next tower, I will confine to red, organic, store-bought potatoes and maybe fingerlings to get a better handle on input versus output. My yield was a paltry 45.4 ounces. That's not a success by any measure. By far, the best results I've ever had is when the potatoes are planted directly in the ground and allowed to just do their thing. This allows you to periodically harvest and check potato sizes for the most significant yield. Unfortunately, as a prepper in the suburbs, I don't have that kind of space. I've had good results in the past growing potatoes in containers, 5-gallon buckets, and even construction-grade trash bags. All of these methods, they actually do work. My final assessment is that I'm not entirely sold on the tower method, but enthusiastic about it enough to give it another try with what I've learned. Unfortunately, with this first attempt, I can't confirm that they're successful all the time, or failures all the time. Any gardener will tell you that gardening is an experiment. The more you practice, the better you get. So, I'll give this another try to either refine the practice or write it off and stop recommending it to people over the 5-gallon pot method, which I know works with the smaller confines of space. What do you think? Have you gotten the potato tower method to be successful for you? What did I do correctly and what did I do wrong? Let me know in the comments while I chit out some more potatoes. As always, stay safe out there.